there's a crew in town. The head hillbillies are making their rounds. Small town whispers loud and clear. The sheriff shot the judge in his chambers chair.
Sheriff got a secret he won't keep. Judge shot dead in his disbelief. A lot of people have some stories to tell. Dark pass away, get the sound of a shotgun shell.
All the secrets spill on down. Voices loud in this old town. From the courthouse to the ground. Rumors fly and they can't be bound.
Neighbors hide behind their blinds. Whisper tales of troubled minds. Skeletons covering the mountainside. A treacherous reality in the pines.
Winter reveals the hidden lies. Moonlight couldn't mask their cries. Shadows caught in sunlit skies. There's no cover, no disguise. All the secrets spill on down. Voices loud in this old town. From the courthouse to the ground. Rumors fly and they can't be bound.
Winter reveals the hidden lie. Moonlight could mask their cries. Shadows caught in sunlit skies. There's no cover, no disguise.
All the secrets spill on down. Voices loud in this old town. From the courthouse to the ground. Rumors fly and they can't be bound.
Hi, everybody. How are you this evening? We've had a couple days, a couple evenings where we've been off. It's good to see everybody. If you've not been here before, this is Hillbilly Crime with Appalachian Roots. My name is Elizabeth. I tried to get a hold of Sweet Tater, but she had some singing classes and songwriting classes, and she just enjoys. She's 80 years old. She's not trying to come up with the world's best jingle, you know. She's just enjoying life. And that's what we should all do, is enjoy our life. Peace. You know, the Lord says that he will give us peace that passes all understanding. And he sure does. He sure does. Live life, you only get one. Perfect segue there. This is going to be heartbreaking. I'll have to watch afterwards back in the hospital. Oh, I'm sorry, honey. We'll be praying for you. Bless you, bless you, bless you. Say prayers for all of our viewers, even people that are not our viewers, of course. You know, we talk about a whole lot of horrible, horrible things. Heartbreaks that most of us could only imagine, you know. But one of the things that we talk about and highlight on this show is that a whole lot more of us are victims of something than, you know, what we would probably guess. You know, I think most of us, the way of the world today, we've all been through some stuff, some traumatizing stuff. No matter where you live, no matter how much money you make. Some of us get in funks. You ever get in a funk? And where you just, are depressed and you're down, and I get in them all the time. You know, it's real easy to just lay on the couch or lay in bed and not do nothing, not even get up and take a shower. You know, sometimes that can make all the difference, just getting up and taking a shower, but having the motivation to do that. And it, you know, you don't have to be poverty stricken and uneducated to deal with depression. You can be one of the biggest hot shots around. That's one of the things also that we see is how people are different behind closed doors, right? People let you see what they want you to see on the outside. But behind closed doors, look how many police officers end up unaliving their spouses. And we don't usually get any look at the DV stuff that happens before that, you know. And everybody just thought he was such a great guy. Man, he was such a good dude. You can be the fire chief and be an old Irv Pay, you know, thief. We got another one. We've had several that have went to jail for skimming money out of the fire departments. It's so easy to do that. So easy with these grants, with this grant money. And I've said it ever since I figured it out. It's just a white collar crime waiting to happen. And they set these things up so with so loose restrictions for a reason. So they can barter with all of this stuff politically when it comes to election time. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that stuff out. The loopholes that are purposefully left, or at least I think so. You know, Ben Fields, when he went to take his polygraph, somebody had to tell him to be honest on that polygraph and tell the truth. And nobody would ever know the difference. He would pass it. Somebody had to give him that information, right? All right, so this case that we are looking at tonight is a tearjerker. It's another Kentucky nightmare of a relationship. We're going to watch this WKYT news story on it. And then I've got a couple articles that I'm going to read for us.
Now is the 19-year-old charged in a Bourbon County double murder case was back in court today.
State police say Christopher Taulbee killed the mother of his child and her boyfriend during a hearing today. A detective took the stand and talked at length about the gruesome double murder.
WKYT Samantha Valentino was in the courtroom, and she's now breaking down that new information. We do want to warn you that some may find the details disturbing.
So around 3 a.m., I received a call from the dispatch center that said that Bourbon County SO was requesting assistance.
Kentucky State Police Sergeant William Howard testified in court Wednesday, sharing details of the double murder that left Dixiana Brainerd and Charles Chucky Calloway dead.
I spoke with Chris Taulbee's father at the scene, Jeremy Taulbee, and we had a conversation which led us to believe, hey, that Chris could be a part of this.
State police later received a call from a homeowner in Carter County saying a naked man was sleeping in a car in their driveway. That car had no driver's side door and a flat tire. Sergeant Howard says that man was Christopher Taulbee and he was arrested. Sergeant Howard says Taulbee told the arresting officer he went to the home on Big Stoner Road to find Dixie and Chucky inside a pickup truck. Taulbee says he shot Dixie before chasing Chucky into a field and stabbing him. Sergeant Howard says evidence indicates Dixie and Taulbee's baby Casey was in the back seat of the truck at the time. After court, the families of Dixie and Chucky stood arm in arm to share one unified message that they have no plans of backing down until justice is served.
I want him to know that we're going to push for everything we have for him to get what he deserves.
These two families didn't know each other prior to the murders, but now they say they're one family.
I want my grandson to know these other kids and to know Charles's family, because they were both impacted on the same instant. So I'm not going to forget these people. I hope they don't forget us, and I'm not going to let Casey forget, who his mama was with that day.
In Bourbon County, Samantha Valentino, WKYT.
KSP says Taulbee initially left the scene of the murders to get another person and brought them to the home. At that point, Chucky was still alive, so troopers say Taulbee beat him with a baseball bat. The witness eventually ran away and reported the murder.
Wow. It's awful, ain't it? I've got a couple articles here. Let me read them. This one is from K105. It was on April 4th, 2025. Teen kills mother of his baby and man in case of DV at its worst. A teenager has been charged with unaliving the mother of his infant. That baby was only like 6 months old, I think they said. And an unidentified man in Bourbon County. Kentucky State Police said a man and woman were discovered deceased on Wednesday at a residence on Big Stoner Road, approximately 10 miles southeast of Paris. A short time later, a male suspect was arrested near the Rowan-Carter County line. The deceased female has been identified as 20-year-old Dixie Brainerd, whose father, Daniel Brainerd, spoke to WLEX.com and confirmed his daughter was one of the victims. The double red rum suspect, 19-year-old Christopher Taulbee, is the father of Brainerd's 4-month-old. So he was only 4 months old. It kind of reminds me of that Pike County massacre in Ohio. They unalived, it was the dad's family of a baby, and they unalived like 8 members of the mommy's family. They unalived the mommy and 7 other members of her family, and they only left the children. And she had just had a 4-day, or she had just had a baby, and the baby was 4 days old when it's daddy and his brother and his mommy and daddy. So it was like a family affair. We're going to go and take out half a dozen people. And people think that they're going to get away with these kinds of crimes. You don't get away with this stuff anymore. Oh, well, I don't know. I guess I should take that back. We got a whole lot of unsolved red rums right here. The grieving, let's see, the father of Brainerd's 4-month-old baby, Case, I guess it'd be Casey, according to Daniel Brainerd. The grieving father calling the incident domestic violence at its worst. Encouraging young women who may be in an unhealthy or abusive relationship to reach out for help. If you need help, don't be scared to ask your parents for it, a friend, a coworker, whoever it may be, because this was domestic violence at its worst. And it was jealousy, and it was rage, an undisciplined children, he told WLEX. Taulbee is lodged in the Bourbon County Detention Center. And if you saw that picture there of him, he looks like he's wearing the turtle suit. That turtle suit ain't no fun. That turtle suit, which I've never wore one, but they're not fun, I can tell you. It's like, you know, when you go to the dentist and you get x-rays done and they put that big lead thing over top of you? Well, that's basically what it is, only it goes all the way around and it like velcros or whatever up on its shoulders and stuff. And that's so they can't hurt themselves with any piece of their clothing. They want to make sure that they make it to trial. Oh, it's just sad. Let me get my kids' pizza out before it burns, y'all. Give me just a second. All right. He can cut it himself or eat it in one big piece. So we've got a couple other things that I wanted to talk about too. Well, let's go over to our comments here. Karen Cottle, was this in Pike County, Ohio? Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. It was in Ohio. That's okay, Indy girl. Thank you for being here, sweetheart. I've got a much bigger story that I've been, that kind of landed in my lap for tomorrow. Or at least I think I'm going to do it tomorrow. So make sure that you're ready for this. I mean, you know, we think in our minds, or at least I do, this stuff really can't be real. Like, you hear these rumors about stuff and you think it's not plausible. Right? It's not even, it doesn't even sound like it could be going on, you know? And you think, well, if I report that, they'll think I've lost it. And then the more you dig, you find out not only is that true, but you find 10 more things that are even worse. Like, my brain didn't even go there on some of this stuff. You know, people are very devious. They're very devious. They are sheep's clothing. They come in like they're going to help. They're your friend. We saw that in that court, in that trial today. The lady that was getting up there testifying, the Roberts lady. Look at how that turned out with her up there on the stand. It just is crazy. Okay, so we had a very interesting situation happen the other night. Well, not interesting. It's a tragedy, absolute tragic. Let me get this up here. There was a press release. And whenever we did that interview with that girl the other day, she said on there, if you watched it, that there was a a news story that was going out that there was a car on fire in Lynch, Kentucky, which was just right across the mountain. We went. Now this, Wise County, Virginia, is just right across the mountain here where I'm at. It's about 5 minutes. Like, we can get to Virginia in 5 minutes. And it's this county right here. And it's a Wise County Sheriff's Office press release for immediate release. It was April 21st, 2025. So it was 2 days ago. Wise County Sheriff's Office issues statement on active homicide investigation in Appalachia, Virginia. Appalachia, Virginia, the Wise County Sheriff's Office. Oh, this might be on the other one. So there was actually 2 situations here. So this might be the other one. Let's read it and see. That occurred during the early morning hours of Sunday, April 20th, 25, in the town of Appalachia. Deputies and investigators responded after evidence emerged suggesting a violent incident that resulted in the death of Sandra Lee Moore, age 44, of Appalachia. Based on information obtained throughout the investigation and a detailed interview with the suspect, the incident has been confirmed as a homicide. The suspect, identified as David Wayne Stoneburner, provided a statement outlining the events that transpired, including actions taken following the victim's death. Following the initial incident, the suspect transported the victim's body across state lines. Yeah, this is it. Into Harlan County, Kentucky, where he attempted to conceal and destroy evidence. Harlan County officials, including the medical examiner and coroner's office, confirmed the victim's identity and pronounced her deceased at 3:05 p.m. on April 20th, 2025. The Wise County Sheriff's Office, working in coordination with multiple law enforcement partners, has executed search warrants and collected forensic evidence related to the case. Additional warrants will be pursued as the investigation develops. At this time, David Wayne Stoneburner has been identified as the primary suspect, and a murder warrant has been secured in Wise County for his arrest. He is currently incarcerated in Harlan County, Kentucky. This remains an active and ongoing investigation due to the sensitive nature of the case. No further details will be released at this time. The Wise County Sheriff's Office is committed to conducting a thorough and professional investigation and continues to collaborate closely with partnering agencies to ensure justice is served. And then anyone with additional information should call them. Let me see. There was another one regarding that. So that was what was happening right when we were over there giving that interview or having that interview. And let me get this up. This was a post on WKYT. Let's pull it up and it shows his picture. Okay, so there he is. Look at him. I mean, he looks kind of normal, but what's normal anymore? I don't even know. I mean, you can't even trust a gray-haired old woman these days, if you ever could. Southwest Virginia man charged with red rum. A man is accused of unaliving his aunt in Wise County before driving her vehicle and setting it on fire with her body inside in Kentucky. According to KSP, authorities responded to a vehicle on fire on Kentucky 160, located on Lynch Mountain in the Lynch community of Harlan, Kentucky, or Harlan County. Troopers and detectives discovered a Toyota passenger vehicle off the roadway and down the mountainside. The body of Sandra Moore was found inside. Kentucky State Police detectives determined that Moore had been involved in a physical altercation earlier that morning with her nephew, 29-year-old David Stoneburner in Wise County. Authorities believe that after the dispute, which led to Moore's death, Stoneburner took her body in her own vehicle to Kentucky. Police said upon arriving at Lynch Mountain, Stoneburner placed Moore in the driver's seat, intentionally set the vehicle on fire, and put the vehicle in motion, causing it to go over the embankment. That sounds familiar, don't it? I think that's what happened up here on Pine Mountain. They found that girl's daddy wrapped up in jumper cables, pushed over the mountain. Stoneburner was taken into custody in Kentucky and has been charged there with abuse of a corpse and arson. The Wise County Sheriff's Office stated that Stoneburner has been charged with red rum there. So that's that case. You know, we never know when our last day's going to be. I mean, the people that we trust the most in our lives, like, I couldn't imagine laying down on my couch and going to sleep, or going in my bedroom and laying down in my bed and going to sleep, and somebody coming in your home, or somebody that's already there, somebody that you love, somebody who you'd think would never hurt you. I mean, that don't even cross my mind. Do I have to worry that my kids would come and hurt me in my sleep? It's a scary, scary thing. Justice Jane, normal, is a sitting on a dryer. Yep. Hit that like button for us, y'all. Lori said 35 more likes to hit 100. That was a little bit earlier, but still. Oh, thank you. Peggy says, love those earrings. This is Miss Amber, one of our viewers. She makes me little earrings and sends them to me. Bless her Jesus. Bless her Jesus. Fire departments. You know, we just had a story last week, or it might have been a couple weeks ago, where we covered the judge in Pike County who had been publicly reprimanded for his behavior, his judicial behavior, or his behavior on the bench, I guess is a better way to say it. And there are certain rules and behavioral guidelines that a lot of these people in the court system have to follow. Like, there's what's called an oath. We're kind of bouncing around a little bit tonight, but forgive me. It's just what it is. but they have to take an oath. And I've often wondered, what do those oaths exactly say? Like, what are they raising their right hand, putting their hand on the Bible, and promising to do? Because I said this the other night. If we have like governors appointing people to these positions, well, don't their personal lives and their character and stuff like that, shouldn't that also be considered when you're asking someone to be honest, unbiased, and they have to, everything that they do on behalf of these offices has to be free of the appearance of impropriety. I mean, that's the whole point, right? So if you've got somebody who's on their, which, I mean, we can all do what we want to do, but you still got to own those consequences then afterwards, So just say it's a man. He's had 5 marriages, kids all over with several different women. They're maxed out, their debt, living way above their means, cheating on their spouses. Well, to me, that shows somebody who lies, shows somebody who cheats, doesn't tell the truth, right? Probably doesn't make very good financial decisions, but yet they're going to be in charge of a lot of money for that office, I suppose. And any other important life-altering decisions. So you have to be really careful to put people in those offices who are going to, when they raise that right hand, they might really be telling the truth. I mean, or is it just going with the motions? Lori, who was he jealous of? His baby? I guess he was jealous of the new boyfriend. So this was of the first story we looked at. Or I guess that's who you're talking about, was the first story. They were no longer together, and she had her a new boyfriend. And this guy just couldn't take the rejection, I guess. The daddy of the baby. Let's see. We're kind of bouncing around. We did that one first. I don't have a longer video that we can watch on that one. Let's see. He says we're lagging some. I'll exit that out. It's probably that. Sometimes you get more tabs open on the computer and it acts bad. Miss Roberta Hall, what a shame. Something has to change in our world. Allegedly, Lisa. The ones you love will hurt you the most. Sorry, Bugman. We'll make this one a short one if y'all don't care tonight. So let me just give you a little taste of what I'm working on. So we are looking more at accountability and the code of conduct that these people who are in positions of authority, law enforcement, elected officials, that they should be abiding by. And it looks to me like there's a whole lot more widespread of a problem with the sexual immorality. I'll get it out in a second. Than what we even first thought. The perverseness, if that's even a word, I don't even know anymore. It is unbelievable how it's being covered up from every direction. Whenever something is brought to light, when somebody does catch one of these fools on camera or has evidence of it and they bring it forward, nothing happens. Not a dang thing happens other than, oh, well, they resign. We're going to let them resign. And as soon as they resign, guess what happens? That internal investigation goes bye-bye. Poof. Bye-bye. And it's just done. Well, what about a criminal investigation then? If their actions meet the level of criminality, then there should be a criminal investigation. No. Not let them retire and enjoy their benefits after they have served this agency and this state long enough years that they can retire. So how do you think that they've been behaving the entire time they were with that agency? Or do you think it just now started? No, I don't think so. That's not how that stuff works. They don't wait until they're 67 years old and then just start being an IRF pay. No, this is a widespread problem in this area. And it's not just law enforcement. It's not just lawyers. It's not just judges. It's also right next door. It's also a lot of times in our homes. Only we don't know about it. Some of us don't know about it. I beg to argue, not differ, argue on that one. A lot of times, it's somebody that you just would have swore up and down, no way. It's a very, very sad thing. Miss Connie, most other jobs that touch money have background checks. Thank you, ma'am. And and they teach each other how to get through certain loopholes and how to fool the systems. The nonprofits that are just starting up everywhere. They get a job with a nonprofit around here, one of these big millions and millions and millions of dollars of grants, grant funded organizations and they need something. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go over here and we're going to create another company and we're going to give ourselves that contract and we'll get all the money. Oh yeah, I've been finding out a lot of stuff. There's a whole lot of tips coming through old Hillbilly train over here. But who do you report any of this stuff to? Because nobody cares. Nobody's going to come in and do any kind of looking or investigation. And if you do mention something, like, I'm no lawyer, remember, but we were talking about that, or they mentioned this in the trial today that we were watching. They found the man's body in the yard. Remember, it was a cop's property that they found this guy on. And the theory is that they had whooped him in the house and then took him outside and just threw him out in the yard. Well, whenever the police and everybody got there, since they found him outside, they didn't do a search warrant on the house because he was a fellow cop. They were setting up the cover up right there. I mean, they were starting the cover up right there. And all of the buddies that came in to investigate later helped. That thin blue line, ask no questions and I'll tell you no lies. But they had enough probable cause just with his body being, at least I think so, but I'm no lawyer, remember. I have to say that. But I would have thought that the body being left on the, in the yard and there being a question that it happened in the house, I would have thought that that would have given probable cause for a search warrant to find a crime scene, right? Well, this situation here with our sheriff and our judge, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm not trained in that aspect, so I don't know. But I wonder, with the sheriff and the judge, why didn't they do a search warrant at their homes to find out, to get their electronics, to investigate what happened? I know that motive is not necessarily a factor that has to be proven, but this isn't a whodunit with the sheriff and the judge. It's a why did he do it? Well, I just would have thought that they would have served a search warrant on their homes to find out why, what was going on. Was Mickey being threatened? Had he gotten threats? Was he being intimidated? What kind of communications was going on with the judge? What did he have on his computers? Is none of that stuff relevant? I think it is, but I don't know. I just would have thought that they would have done that. Joe Schmo, baby daddies have a delicate ego. Don't come at them too hard. There's a whole lot of people got delicate egos. Miss Peggy, horrible thing. Think about it. You have a really bad itch and you are going crazy. Then you think you got a new back scratcher. Miss Monica, like a president with 39 felonies, shouldn't that be considered? I'm just saying. It doesn't show, like, if they've not shown good decision making in their own personal life, how could you think that they're going to show any good decision making professionally? But that's just my viewpoint on stuff. Trust me, I used to be a screw up big time. Still am, only by the grace of God. It's not in the same ways anymore. Please hit that. Yes, it helps our channel. Go, go, Gadget Arms. Tammy says, my mama was born on Pine Mountain in Mississippi. That's cool. That's cool. I haven't ever had that problem with my monkey arms, Crystal says. Miss Leanne, I was watching a story yesterday. A boyfriend walked into a hospital with a pew-pew, went to unalive girlfriend and baby, felt she was cheating, and there were 2 nurses unalived. I saw that story myself, watched it all. And it's drugs and alcohol. This guy, this baby's daddy that came in there, he was on parole or probation. I think he was on parole. And he asked them for permission to go up there and see his new baby that had been born. He had been drinking, and it went all bad. He didn't end up pew-pewing the baby or the baby mama, but he did 2 nurses who lost their lives senselessly, very senselessly. And if the security guard hadn't have been there when and where he was, he probably saved a whole lot of people's lives that day at that hospital. He was a hero. That guy was an absolute hero. Let's see. Miss Allegedly Lisa. Oh, yes, it happens a lot. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Yep. Yes. Miss Deborah, thank you. We are watching the Karen Reed trial during the day. We missed day 1 because I had an appointment, and I planned on catching up today, but I couldn't wait. I had to go. So we started this morning with day 2. We'll start tomorrow with day 3. We'll stay right on schedule with them as long as we can. And so join us. Make sure that you come and join us during the day. We start at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and we go until court is out for that day. And one of the things that I loved what Mickey Steins' lawyer said in an interview that he did back in November was that a lot of these shows were helping people finally see for themselves what court is really like. What happens behind the scenes, behind those court doors in the courthouse. How does the prosecution behave? Do they purposefully mislead? Do they purposefully manipulate? Oh, I see so many prosecutors behaving horribly in these trials, breaking the rules. That rapper trial that just ended, I learned things watching that trial that I just didn't know happened. I didn't know that it was as bad and as blatant as what it is. You have to remember all the players in a county courthouse, they're co-workers. They work together every single day. They spend a lot of time together. How do you expect these cases to not be influenced by human error, by peer pressure, pure old corruption, money? Who can afford the highest paid attorney? Or is it who can afford the attorney who has the closest friendship with the judge? In these small rural areas, I think it more leans towards the latter. And if you happen to be a judge or a lawyer in this area, then you want to be as good of friends with that judge as you possibly can. You're probably going to kiss his hiney. Never say no. How does that make justice? Doesn't it kind of overpay the whole meaning of it? And justice is supposed to be blind. It's not very blind. Marnie, no hyperthermia on him, so he had not been laying out there too long. That's about the trial we've been watching this today. It's a perfect example of a setup, a cover-up. I don't think that those boys meant to unalive him. I think they jumped him. I think the one guy, his girlfriend, Karen Reed, wouldn't sleep with him. They were all cops. They were all first responders of some kind. And I think they threw him out there and thought, and they were all drinking, and they'd been drinking all day long. Alcohol is not, people can have blackouts. You can be the smartest feller and know all the laws and all the rules, and you may even know how to get away with it. But when you're drinking or in a blackout, you're not going to be thinking rationally. You're not going to be thinking, like, to me, it looks like they panicked. They threw him out there. They knew he was in bad shape. They threw him out there, got scared, panicked, and started covering it up. And then when Karen shows up and she starts saying, well, did I hit him? Did I hit him? That was perfect timing, because then they could be like, oh, well, she hit him. And it's kind of like everybody just jumped onto that and then tried to make the evidence fit their theory of that, knowing the whole time that they were the ones responsible. Let's see, Deborah, all the cops got rid of their phones. They sure did. They didn't have, and even the prosecutor, he's kind of like, okay, these investigators did such a horrible job and they messed everything up. So don't look at the investigation. Don't look at them police officers. Here, just look at this data. Look at the data that we got off of their phones. Look at this data of the evidence. We found DNA here. We found a hair there. Well, if they really set up and covered this up, it wouldn't be a stretch of the imagination to think that they would plant evidence or that they would just ask for certain testing to be done. Like, the lab doesn't do any testing that the police do not request done. Like, the police have to request for certain things to be analyzed, tested, or whatever. And if they have not written those instructions down for the lab or told them, or ordered those testing or that testing, then they're not going to have it. They're not going to do it. They're going to do it according to how the orders are written for that. I assume. Anyway, makes sense, doesn't it? But if they are manipulating and, kind of doing this on the fly, because I don't think they meant to do it. That's just my opinion. I don't think they meant to do it at all. I think it was just a fluid situation that just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And they tried to cover it up as best they could. But now too many people know about it. Like too many people knew. And they talked amongst themselves so much that they've kind of messed their own testimonies up, their own credibility. Connie, they know why, hence no search warrant, is what I think. Allegedly, Lisa, I was at the doctor yesterday and today. I did get to catch the very last of the Lori Daybell. Yeah, we missed that verdict too. Finding her guilty was worth everything. Well, I didn't have no doubt that they were going to find her guilty, so I wasn't too worried about catching it. Figured she'd be guilty. Thank you, Miss Crystal. Wild child, not screw up. Bless you, bless you. Bugman, I got up at 4 a.m. Bless your heart, for an appointment at the VA. I know it's the VA is a very important institution. We desperately need good workers. We need good nurses. We need good doctors. We also need good lawyers. We need good policemen. We need good judges. Oh no, did you just say go, go, gadget arms? I say that all the time. Sometimes it is feet or arms or whatever I'm doing. Yes, you have a safe trip, Bug. We love you. We love you. Bug says they saved his life. Amen, honey. Marnie, the defense opening statement is very good in the retrial. Do y'all want to watch that? We could watch that. I was wanting to watch it. I'll pull it up. That would at least give us something else interesting to watch. But it's burning up in my house tonight. I am a sweating down. This weather that we have these days is just like, it could be 30 degrees at night and be 75 degrees the next day. We just watched the opening statements, if I can find it here. Yeah. Let me get it up here, and we'll just watch the opening statements of it. We won't watch any of the other rest of it. Because I was wanting to watch them anyway. So at least we'll be caught up for tomorrow.
And truly try the issues between the Commonwealth and the defendant according to the evidence and the law. If you follow that oath, approach this case with an open mind, and make your decisions fairly and without prejudice or bias. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor. At 6:04 a.m. on January 29, 2022, the alarm bell sounded in the Canton Fire Department. Firefighter, paramedic, Tim Nuttall knew what that meant. His heart skipped a beat. He raced to his equipment and he picked up his bag, which was meticulous. There was a sign and a signal, and then there was a voice commanding that there was cardiac arrest. The most person's heart to stop. He didn't know who it was. He didn't know where it was. He took his bag. He had just gotten to the station, and he rushed to the ambulance. He was one of the most senior paramedics that morning. Another paramedic, Anthony Flamati, would be running this mission. He jumped in the back of the ambulance. The door shut, and they headed off to 34th Fairview Road. As they drove, firefighter Nuttall could not see anything. He couldn't hear anything other than the engine of the ambulance. He could feel it sliding across the road. It was near blizzard conditions. He calmed himself, he steadied himself. This is what the firefighters and paramedics are trained to do, to focus. And he focused on his task. He looked around the back of the ambulance to make sure all the tools were in place. The ambulance was meticulous as well. This was Anthony Flamati's ambulance, and it was well stocked. He calmed himself and he thought about what was going to happen. What should he be looking for? What is his next steps? He played the scenarios through his mind, and every calm was above him. As the car pulled up to 34 Fairview, the ambulance, he stood at the back door, the doors open, and he stepped out into bedlam. He could hear a woman screaming and shrieking, the cold, hard air slapping on his face, and the wind, blizzard conditions swirling around him. You will hear him tell you how he trudged towards those screams in the darkness to snow. And when he got there, he saw 3 women surrounding a man lying, not moving on the ground. He walked up to the man and he reached down and he tried to find any signs of life, pulse, anything. And he found nothing. And he got up and he walked over to the woman, and he walked over to that defendant, Karen Reed, and he told her that he thinks that man is gone. And then he heard the yell from Anthony Flamati, the chief, and he said, "Come back, let's go." Because you'll learn that in the cold, even if somebody's heart stops, even if they're presumed to have passed, sometimes you can still save a life. So you'll see on a dash cam video, you'll hear from testimony, he went back to that man who's John O'Keefe. He went back to him, and that crew, coordinated effort, they did everything they could to save his life. They got on their knees, they began CPR, and firefighter Nuttall will explain as he kneeled over John O'Keefe. He looked up, and the defendant approached him, and you'll see it on the video. Now, he wanted any information, because when you're trying to save someone, you want to know, are they on drugs, medication, do they have a heart condition? And he looked up at Miss Reed and he said, "What happened?" And you'll hear her words to firefighter Nuttall. She said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." And it was at that time, through the words of the defendant, that she admitted what she had done that night, that she hit John O'Keefe. Now, those words didn't mean anything to firefighter Nuttall. They weren't in context. They didn't reconcile with the injuries. It didn't help him in his treatment, so he ignored it. Now, firefighter Nuttall is not a police officer. He is not an investigator. He is not a detective. He's a first responder. And so he takes that information. It was useless to him. He continues to work on John O'Keefe, trying to save his life. You'll see the team put him on a stretcher. And when they lift him from the ground, even though there is snow, and beneath his body laid his cell phone. They bring him to the ambulance, and while they bring him to the ambulance, you'll see on the videos that other first responders speak to the defendant. One first responder, Mr. Flamati, she will say, "I hit him, oh my God, I hit him." And then she was interviewed or asked questions for background information, not a criminal investigation, just background to try to help John. And she was asked questions about his background. And during that conversation, you won't hear her see the defendant was a person by the name of Jen McCabe and a firefighter McLaughlin. And she tells Fire McLaughlin, the third first responder, I did. They bring Mr. O'Keefe to the Good Samaritan Hospital, and his body is cold. The doctors work feverishly. They treat him, try to save him. They try to warm his corpse. And unfortunately, firefighter Nuttall's first instinct was accurate. John O'Keefe passed. So why are we here today? We are here today because John O'Keefe was killed by the actions and conduct of that defendant, Karen Reed. You will learn through this case, through facts, science, and data, you will learn that on January 29th, 2022, when the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe were in front of 34 Fairview Road, all the way to the left side in a dark corner near a flagpole, you will learn that Mr. O'Keefe got out of the car. He got out and he stood by the side of the road after an argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication, you will learn from the science and data as he stood by the side of the road, the defendant and her SUV drove away. She drove at least 35 feet away. The argument was over. It had ended. But then she stopped. She stopped. She put the Lexus into neutral and she waited. And the facts and the science and data will tell you that despite the fact the argument was over, she then put the Lexus into reverse, put her foot on the gas pedal and began to press, not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% acceleration. There was a light dusting of snow. The Lexus tire spun backwards. She went backwards at least 70 feet. She clipped John O'Keefe. He fell backwards, hit his head, broke his skull. And there he lay at the corner of Fairview Road, on the ground, lying on top of his cell phone, alone. And then the defendant will later tell that when she left, he didn't look mortally wounded, yet he was. And she simply drove away. Now, before I tell you about the data and the facts and the science, and I walk you through that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was a young man, a local kid, very well liked, loved. John O'Keefe is the son of Peggy O'Keefe, John O'Keefe Sr., and the brother of Paul O'Keefe. Grew up in Canton, worked hard, he became a police officer. But what you're going to learn, the fact that he worked for the Boston police officer, as a Boston police officer, was just a fraction of his life. It was a small, really unimportant part, because the biggest part of John O'Keefe is he was a family man. Not in the traditional sense. You see, John O'Keefe never had biological children. John O'Keefe was never married. But John O'Keefe had a sister, and she had 2 children. And when the children were 6 and 3 years old, his sister unfortunately died. And shortly after, his sister's husband died. And John O'Keefe was at home. He didn't sit by. He saw these 2 recently orphaned children, and he stepped in and he said he was going to raise them. So he put aside his career, he put aside his job, and he moved in with the children and raised them like they were his home. They were his passions, his love. He was a new parent, successes, failures, like all parents. And he raised the children with the help of people in the community, with the help of his brother, with the help of his family. And they led a good life. Enter Karen Reed. Around COVID, the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe reacquainted, and they started a relationship. And you'll hear that even though the defendant had her own home, she was staying with Mr. O'Keefe a lot, 4, 5, 6 times a week. And to most of the world, it was a pretty good relationship. They spent time together. They did activities with the children together. She helped with driving the children, feeding the children. It was a steady relationship until about the beginning of 2022. And then things began to unravel. There was tension. There was arguments. In fact, just a few days before this incident, you'll hear that Mr. O'Keefe asked her to leave, but she wouldn't. You're going to be able to read text messages of their conversations on January 28, 2022, and you will see the tension and the unraveling of the relationship. You will read about the discord between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe. You will see that when he would ignore her calls, they would become incessant. When he would try to push away, she would come closer. You will read those text messages and you will realize that this was the beginning of the end of this relationship. That night, they decided they would go out together. I want to tell you something about data and science before we get to that night. I mentioned that underneath John's body was a cell phone. A cell phone is an amazing piece of technology. It is like a computer. It carries extraordinary data. And when they found the cell phone, the only companion to John O'Keefe that night, they studied the cell phone, and there'll be some remarkable data that you will use in this case to find the truth. I want to mention 3 different things you will find in a cell phone that are critical to this case. The first is called location data. Waze we've all heard of, Google Maps. Well, at some point that night, John put his Waze on, and Waze is like a breadcrumb that will show exactly where the phone goes second by second. It is the strongest, most accurate location data that you can have. And that night, John was using Waze. It also will have healthcare data. Healthcare data will show when somebody is moving. Sometimes it's qualified as steps, but it doesn't necessarily mean somebody's stepping. Moving their arms, walking, turning. It doesn't show what direction or how far, but it shows movement of a person. Okay. And the third thing, remarkably, there will be an expert in this case who found a data file on the phone, and it tracks the temperature of the cell phone battery. That will be critical to your analysis in this case, the temperature of the cell phone battery. And so with that, I want to take you back to the timeline of that night. After the discord, both the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe decided they would meet at a bar called McCarthy's. Now, McCarthy's is a local bar, a blizzard is pending, and people are getting together in a celebratory mood. They go to McCarthy's and you see a video of McCarthy's, and you will watch both Mr. O'Keefe, friends, and the defendant drinking alcohol. And you will count 8 vodka drinks that the defendant drank. They arrived at 8:50, they stayed till 9:45. She consumed at least 7 of those drinks in less than 2 hours. The last drink, you'll see when they leave the bar, she puts it under the jacket, and they walk out and they go to another bar to meet other friends called the Waterfall. They reach the Waterfall sometime around 10 p.m. And when they go into the Waterfall, you'll see a video. And when I said celebratory mood, you will see a group of friends of John O'Keefe, many who are friends with Karen through John, and you'll see them clapping and happy and joyous that they're there. You'll see many hugs between John O'Keefe and his friends and the defendant and many of the people there. And they spend some time together, they're drinking, and they all do a shot. And that will be at least the 8th drink within 3 hours that you consume. You will see from the data, not just the cell phone data, but there's some other very important data. And the other piece of data that goes hand in glove with the cell phone is information on the defendant's Lexus vehicle chips. You might have heard of a black box in an airplane, or there's some type of event that captures a small amount of time. Well, that was captured in the defendant's Lexus. That black box information with the cell phone data will tell you everything you need to know in this case. It will bring us step by step through the entire night to the death of John O'Keefe. And so they leave the Waterfall bar at 12:12, and you'll see that the ignition goes on into the defendant's Lexus. And both John O'Keefe and the defendant in the car, and they decide that they're going to go back to 34 Fairview Road, what we talked about earlier. They're going to go there for a get together for one of the homeowner's sons who's having a birthday party. And so as they drive back, you will be able to follow them with this location data. When they go back to Fairview, they don't know exactly where it is and they get lost. And so John O'Keefe makes a phone call, has a phone call with one of his friends, Jen McCabe. And during that phone call, which the defendant listens to because she recounts it, and trying to get directions, Jen McCabe tells John O'Keefe, it's near Bella's mom's house. You'll learn that Bella, or her mom, is somebody that John had dated before. And so as they make their way through Fairview, you will see there's a road that comes down like a loop and that leads to Fairview. They take a wrong turn on the loop, and then they do a 3-point turn in the driveway. You see the exact precise driveway they turn into because some type of acceleration movement triggered that black box in the Lexus. And that's important. Keep that 7 minutes before the collision. And you'll see from the waves exactly where the car was. You'll see from the black box the event of the 3-point turn in the driveway, and then a return down to Fairview. But before they get there, at 12:23, a truck is coming the other way. And the witnesses in that truck will say they blinked the lights, one of them saw a man and woman in the car, John and the defendant, and then they followed the Lexus because they were going to the same house. The truck stopped at the driveway, and the Lexus, the defendant's car, will appear because of the waves and be counted second to second, never stops. It rolls very slowly all the way to the end of the yard in the corner where there's a tree line and a flagpole. And they reach that location at 12:34:33. And they're in the car and they stay there. The truck waits, they speak to somebody in the house who's coming out. The person goes back in the house and they're there for about 5 minutes. We're now down to 2 minutes before the collision. The truck leaves, and now it's just the defendant and John. And while they're waiting outside, 12:27, John gets a text from Jen McCabe, park behind us in the driveway. 12:29, he texts again, are you coming in? You'll hear that Jen McCabe and others look out the window and see the defendant's Lexus in front of the flagpole at the far end. It's snowy, it's dark, it's windy, they're waiting. You will know that John O'Keefe was in that car, that Lexus, and didn't move because his healthcare data is not moving. It's not moving until 12:31:56. At 12:31:56, he begins to move. You will have 20 seconds before he falls. 20 seconds. He gets out of the car, the Lexus, and in that 20 seconds, you'll hear that user initiated. He looks at the phone, at the text message he Jen McCabe. It's now 12:32:09. He closes the phone the last time. It will be the last time he uses that phone. From the waterfall bar, you see that he uses that phone. That time, 12:32:09, last user, he has 7 more seconds he will move before he lies dormant the rest of the night. We'll also have the information from the defendant's Lexus black box. The clocks run differently. There's a 30-second variance, but it's right in the heart of that time. And you will see through the data at that time, when he makes his last movements with the phone, is when her car leaves 34 feet at least, stops, neutral, and then shoots into reverse with the tires spinning right towards him. Right when he got out. You'll know they're arguing because the next morning she tells a firefighter, I'm sad because our last moments were fighting. She drives away. Like I said, she's made later statements that when she left, he didn't look mortally wounded. He lied on the ground on top of his phone, light dusting of snow, the snow now picking up. And he's just there. It's 12:37. Now, when he's in the car, Before he gets to Fairview, the battery temperature of that phone is 77 degrees. 77 degrees in the warm car. Now that he's been outside the car for 5 minutes, it drops to 72 degrees. She drives to his house. She makes a phone call at 12:33 after she's left Fairview. She calls again at 12:36:33 and leaves a message. You'll hear it. And you will hear the anger and rage in her voice. She leaves a message. John, I fucking hate you. Pardon my language. You will hear the simmering. And she leaves that message. He lies on the side of the road. He gets another text message that's unanswered. Where are you? 12:45. Battery temperature, 61 degrees. So he gets almost 40 calls from the defendant that night. His phone rings, but it never rings. You'll hear from an expert that the light never initiates, the healthcare data never moves. John alone with his only again in his phone. At 12:53, cell phone drops to almost 60 degrees. 12:59, the defendant leaves another message on John's phone. Now, she hasn't spoken to anybody. Nobody has spoken to her, but her message is out. You'll learn the message says, John, nobody knows where you are. And this is where the plot in the cover-up begins. The evidence will make clear that she knew he was there. She did not call 911. She did not go back to him. She did not leave an anonymous tip. She left him. The night wears on. It's now 1:07. Battery temperature 55 degrees. 1:14, she calls her mother. No answer. 1:14:53. Battery temperature 50 degrees. The defendant had healthcare data on her phone as well, and you'll hear that it stops around that time. And you'll later learn that she admits to falling asleep and passing out. But then she wakes. 5 o'clock, she is frantic. She wakes up John's niece, and she is unintelligible. She is yelling, she's screaming, she asks for the niece to call Jen McCabe. She calls Jen McCabe, and you'll hear Jen McCabe recount. Out of a deep sleep, she wakes up and she hears, Jen, 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 screaming Jen's name. John's dead. Hangs up the phone. Jen McCabe calls back, and then she says, what's going on? And she told, well, I left him at the waterfall. At the beginning of the cover. She told Jen McCabe, I left him at the waterfall. Jen calls back and says, you saw you up front. You did leave him at the waterfall. She hangs up. He then minutes later calls another person, Terry Roberts, a friend of John O'Keefe. Someone who's not friends with the defendant, but they know because they helped raise the kids when they interacted. She had nothing to do with the night before. Wasn't at the bars, was home with her family. She calls her and says, I think John got hit by a plow. I think he's dead. Now Terry, with that information, calls 911. She calls the hospitals. You can hear her voice. She's concerned. Okay. And then she gets another call from the defendant. She tells the defendant, come to my house. I will help you look for him. And the defendant says, I was so drunk last night, I don't remember anything. Waiting for her to arrive, she learns she doesn't arrive. Instead, the defendant goes to Jen McCabe's house. Terry Roberts, the other friend, then goes to Jen McCabe's house, pulls behind the car. And when she does, she's on the Bluetooth, and she can hear the defendant saying, my taillight's broken, my taillight's broken. And she looks, and the snow packed in the right taillight, she can see a piece of the taillight missing. The defendant desperately wants to go to 34th Fairview Road, but Terry Roberts takes over and says, we're going to go back to John's house. Maybe he's in the house when you didn't see him. So both cars, driven by Terry Roberts and then Jen McCabe, with the defendant, go back to John O'Keefe's house. You'll see a ring video where you see them go into the house and they look around, and you'll hear about the woman, Jen and Terry, enlisted into this task. Look for John O'Keefe. They cannot find him. And then when Terry Roberts comes into a room, she sees Rather than looking, the defendant simply standing there, staring at the wall. At that point, the defendant insists they got to go back to Fairview Road. They decide to take one car. Terry Roberts is taking charge. She's going to drive. They leave Miss Reed's Lexus and John Keith's driveway, and they drive back towards 34 Fairview Road. Look there, it is blizzard-like conditions. It is dark. They can barely see a thing. And when they get close to the edge of 34 Fairview, you hear the defendant start to scream, "There he is!" Both women look and they can't see anything. She starts kicking the door. The defendant's kicking the door, "Let me out." Terry Roberts stops the car and lets her out, and she sees the defendant run exactly to where John O'Keefe is in the darkness. That's where she left him. Terry gets out of the car, starts to walk towards where the defendant is, and she sees the defendant lying on a body. She can't tell who it is because the face is still covered with snow. And she comes over and looks, and she wipes off the snow from John O'Keefe's face. She realizes it's one of her best friends in the world is John O'Keefe. And she starts to try to do first aid. They start to move him, and coincidentally at 6:06, when they start to move him, the cold air hits that cell phone battery. It drops from 50 to 43 degrees. And they try, Jen McCabe calls 911. And that's when a police officer arrives, firefighter Nuttall and his crew. And when they lift him, that cell phone battery that is shot down to 37 degrees, Terry Roberts picks it up and puts it in her pocket, and it immediately starts to warm. As she moves to help get data, showing movement starts again. At that point, nobody knows what happened. The Canton Police Department come. You can see the police cars and cruisers. They're not sure, so they look in the area where John's body is and find a glass from the bar near his body. They find blood spots. They try to put the blood spots in plastic containers. They don't know what they're looking for at this point. There's no information. They don't believe or know that there's a crime. They just know that John O'Keefe somehow ended up here with the broken glass and the blood. And so that morning, you can see the work of the Canton Police Department try to uncover a little bit around his body to see what they could find, which was very little. And then Terry Roberts goes and picks up Peggy O'Keefe, tells them the news, and they go to the hospital. They go to the Good Samaritan Hospital, and Terry Roberts is walking, and Peggy O'Keefe is going to go see her son, with her husband. And as she walks down the hall, Karen Reed is also in the hospital. See, there was some reports of maybe she was upset or suicidal, so they sectioned her. They put her in for evaluation to make sure she was safe. You'll hear Peggy O'Keefe tell her she walked down the hall to go see her son. The defendant was screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" As she walked by Karen Reed, she stopped and she said, "Karen, what happened?" And you hear that Karen was excited and yelling, "Is he dead?" Stops for a second. He becomes stoic. He doesn't say a word. Peggy pays respects to her son, and then she has to go back home because she has to tell the children. Now, while she's out, the Canton Police Department send an officer to the house to make sure the children are safe because they're alone if they're home. And when the officer pulls in, he doesn't notice anything, but you'll see in the dash cam, his dash cam video notices something. That tail light has a big missing piece to it. They can't find the children. Ultimately, Peggy comes home, a friend can take it down, and they bring the nephew home, and he is distraught. And then Peggy hears a knock on the door. It is the defendant and her father. They want to come in. They come in, no condolences to Peggy. And they ask, "Can you go upstairs to John's room?" And she's busy consoling her grandson. They go upstairs, they're upstairs for about 15 minutes. They come down, and quickly they leave. Now they got there from the defendant's father, drove his wife and the father to that house. But when they leave, they take two cars. They take the Lexus with the broken taillight with them back to the defendant's father's house. And you learn that when police start getting some of the information, they learn about the broken taillight, they learn information that she had told people that she had hit him. They went down to see her. And on their way down, they decided they would get a warrant to take the Lexus. When they get down to Dayton, where the car is, you'll hear from Trooper Buchanan, who took a look at the They went in and spoke briefly to the defendant. They took the car and brought it back to Canton. And so what you'll learn from the forensic evidence that will help with the science and data is that not only was the cell phone left behind, but also around that area, broken taillight was littered around John O'Keefe's body. Littered around that area. When they got into the hospital, they noticed there was a shoe missing. As time went by, snow melted, they done the excavations, they found the shoe on a little berm on the border between the street and the grass. We learned days later when they did a plant excavation, they found his cat frozen into the ground. Ultimately, they would find over the course of 10 days that the snow melted almost every piece of that broken taillight in that area. The cat, the sneaker, the glass. When the defendant left Mr. O'Keefe behind, took with her something of Mr. O'Keefe called trace evidence. You'll learn on the back of her Lexus, around the taillight area, is John's DNA, and stuck to the side, grasping one last piece of John O'Keefe's hair. Now, John O'Keefe fell backwards and hit his head after he was clipped by the car. And you're going to hear from a very renowned doctor, a neurosurgeon, who has treated thousands and thousands of head injuries. And then the wound on the back of the head, when he fell backwards, not a cracked skull, it's called a basal fracture. It created an injury called counter. After he was hit by a car and fell backwards and hit his head on that hard rock ground, remember there's no snow, it's just a dusting at this point, the back of his brain hits the back of his skull and bounces up. When it bounces up, it leaves marks showing that impact. And this neurosurgeon will tell you, treated thousands of patients, that this injury, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, is counter-coup caused by falling backwards and hitting your head. When the medical examiner for the state looked at it, they generally said blunt force trauma, and it is undetermined. So we brought it to the renowned neurosurgeon who does exactly this. You're also going to hear from an active reconstruction. His name is Doug Welcher. Does not work for the state police or local police. He was hired to take a look at this case and the data. They will come in and explain to you exactly what I talked about, how the data from that black box coincides with the cell phone and the movements of the car, the moments before, during, and after the defendant struck John O'Keefe with her car. Now, just a few more things I want to share with you. There are 3 charges against the defendant in this case. The first one, second-degree murder. When most people hear murder, they instantly think shooting somebody, stabbing somebody, putting deliberate premeditation. I will start doing a lot. I'm not going to trample in that area, but I can tell you clearly, we are not going to try to prove that Karen Reed tried to kill John O'Keefe. We're not going to try to prove to you that she intended or wanted him dead. That's not second-degree murder. What we'll prove to you is she engaged in an intentional act, driving back at him at that speed, in the storm, in the darkness, knowing that he had just gotten out of her Lexus. She intended that act would cause a plain, strong likelihood of death. That's what we'll prove to you for second-degree murder. Also, operating under the influence of alcohol, manslaughter will prove to you that she drove her Lexus recklessly. She hit John O'Keefe, and because she hit him and he fell back, she caused his death. The third charge is leaving the scene after knowingly causing death. Again, she hit Mr. O'Keefe with a car. She knew he was injured. She left him behind. And he died. That's the whole group. This case will come down to the science and the data. The science and the data, the cell phone, it is the best of historians. It doesn't suffer from intoxication. It doesn't suffer from memory loss. It doesn't suffer from emotion, pride, or prejudice. It is facts. It is data. And that facts and data will lead you to the truth in this case. But after Ms. Reed was charged, she began what you'll learn as a campaign to make public statements. 2020, Nightline, Fox 25, a documentary. And we've had an opportunity to get many of her statements in the footage, and we're going to show much of it to you. And her statements to you will confirm what you already know from the science and data, what you will already conclude from the facts independent about what she did that night. Her word simply confirmed that your judgment is sound. And you're going to hear from her own lips and many of her statements, her admissions to extraordinary intoxications, her admissions to driving near lapses, her admissions to being angry at John that night. And I dare say her admissions that she told. I'd like to play for you clip one. You're going to hear the first of the statements that she made after she was charged.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tagged him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in his drunkenness and in the cold didn't come to again?
And this would have been the moment you dropped him off at the party.
Yeah, would have had to.
Ladies and gentlemen, I simply ask you to follow the evidence, follow the science, follow the data. Ignore speculation, surmise, conjecture. Stay true to the evidence. It will lead you to the truth. That on January 29, 2022, a very intoxicated defendant was angry and arguing about the relationship with John O'Keefe. And after the fight was over, she left, but she brought the fight back to him in the form of her SUV. She clipped him, he fell backwards, he broke his head, and then this man who helped, a lifetime of help, was left at the corner of that yard, left to die with no help. The facts, the data, and the evidence will bring you the truth, and the defendant's own words will confirm everything you've already concluded.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Could I have just a moment to readjust?
Sure, the court officers will be kind enough to help you.
May I, Your Honor? The evidence in this case will establish above everything else 3 points. There was no collision with John O'Keefe. There was no collision. There was no collision. John O'Keefe did not die from being hit by a vehicle. Period. The facts will show that. The evidence will show that. The data will show that. The science will show that. And the experts will tell you that. You'll learn that the Commonwealth has pinned its entire case on a brazen and a flawed assertion that is untethered, unconnected to the facts and to the evidence. And their assertion is contrary to science. Because at the end of the day, folks, there was no collision with John O'Keefe. So how did we end up here? How does Karen Reed end up sitting in that chair on trial for something, for an event that literally never happened? Well, the evidence is going to explain it. And it can be summed up in the following text message at the very beginning of this investigation, a text message of a now fired Massachusetts State Police officer named Michael Proctor. He was the lead investigator on this case, and he was talking about a fellow officer, a fellow cop who owned the property where John O'Keefe's body was found. Text message with a buddy. Question, is the homeowner going to catch any shit? Answer, nope. He's a Boston cop too. That quote defines the lack of integrity of the Commonwealth's entire case, its entire investigation, and this prosecution. During the course of this trial, you'll learn much more about what you'll see and hear in this courtroom in the coming weeks is not just a story gloss. And make no mistake, John O'Keefe's death is and was a tragic and tragic loss. But the story you'll hear is about an investigation that was riddled with error, conflicted and corrupted from the start, corrupted by bias, corrupted by incompetence, and corrupted by deceit. Finally, it was corrupted by a deliberate effort to avoid and to cover up the very truth that you are seeking. You'll find when you hear the evidence that the Commonwealth's case is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. They won't be able to talk their way out of it. They won't be able to explain their way out of it. They won't be able to excuse their way out of it. You is beyond any and all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. Members of the jury, Karen Reed found John O'Keefe dead on the front lawn of a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, at 6 a.m. on January 29th, 2022. Picture the scene. Blood-curdling screams, ambulances, emergency lights on, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol cruisers, police officers, first responders, firefighters, all swarming all over Brian Albert's lawn, literally feet under his bedroom window. Yet Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder himself, never came outside. Never went outside to see what the chaos was about, never went outside to see if he could assist a man in need, never walked outside his house to see if he could help a fallen fellow officer on his own front lawn. More shockingly, you'll learn that lead investigator for the Massachusetts Police, Michael Proctor, never set foot inside Brian Albert's house that day. Never engaged in any investigation inside that house that day, even though a party with much alcohol had just occurred in that house, and even though a Boston police officer was found dead or dying just mere feet from the front door on that lawn. He never secured the crime scene, never separated and secured witnesses. He never properly collected evidence. He never secured the evidence. He never searched for signs of a struggle inside or outside the home. He never properly canvassed the neighborhood. Michael Proctor never did any of these things, even though fellow officers of his, of Michael Proctor's, actually mentioned, in their words, not mine, that it looked like John O'Keefe may have been, quote, in a fight. You'll have questions about that conduct. During the course of this trial, you'll find that the Commonwealth will not have answers. You'll see from the evidence in this case that this case carries a malignancy, one that is spread through the investigation. It's spread through the prosecution from the very start, from the jump. A cancer that cannot be cut out, a cancer that cannot be cured. And that cancer has a name. And his name is Michael Proctor. Now, you didn't hear his name in the prosecution's opening statement. Not once. And I suspect that was probably by design. But make no mistake about it. The evidence will show in this case that Michael Proctor is the very definition of the Commonwealth's case. And he's also their Achilles heel. He was the lead investigator on the case officer, the architect of the entire prosecution. You'll learn there's not a single part of this case, folks, not a single part that he didn't touch, that he didn't direct, that he didn't orchestrate personally. Every single bit of it has his fingerprints on it. You'll learn that Michael Proctor was a longtime family friend of the Alberts. And he's been disgraced by his own agency, not by us, by the Massachusetts State Police. Investigated, suspended, and fired. The evidence will show that Massachusetts State Police found him guilty, found Michael Proctor guilty of bringing dishonor to the department for his conduct, not in some other case, not in some tangential case, in this case. The investigation of Karen Reed. Conduct that included bias in favor of his friends, the all-powerful Albert family, and bias against my client, Miss Reed, the outsider. Do you have any idea how hard it is for a state trooper to get fired? Well, the evidence is going to show that Michael Proctor earned it, every bit of it. You'll hear that within hours of a Boston police officer being found dead on Brian Albert's lawn, Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, who had investigated exactly nothing up to this point, right at the beginning, made an early pronouncement that Brian Albert himself was not going to, quote, catch any shit, end quote. And that was for one reason and one reason only. He's a Boston cop. The evidence will show that Michael Proctor made this statement in a text conversation with his high school buddies. A text he never thought would see the light of day, certainly never thought we would get a hold of. And when he thought no one was looking, he actually said the quiet part out loud. He said, we'll give him a pass. You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, rank has its privileges. And the evidence will show that's privileges that you don't get and I don't get. But apparently a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, and his friends, they do get. You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, he didn't care about finding the truth. In his world, his priority was to protect the brotherhood, to protect that blue wall, to protect his friends who were at the Alberts' house that night. I want to take a step back, if I could, and spend the next few minutes talking a little bit more detail about what the actual facts in this case will show, not based on speculation, not based on surmise, not based on guesswork or conjecture, but the actual true facts that you will learn through the course of this trial. On January 28th, 2022, it was a Friday night. John and Karen had made plans to meet up with friends for drinks. It was a happy and normal night for them. They were affectionate, they were loving, they were in good spirits, nothing out of the ordinary. They started at a local watering hole called C.F. McCarthy's. You've heard that name before and you'll hear it again. And eventually they made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, another bar where they ended up. When they got to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, the Albert family was already there, already heavily drinking. You'll learn that this was no ordinary family, the Alberts. The Albert family was a well-known Canton family. Some might even describe them as a very powerful Canton family. Brian Albert was there at the waterfall. You'll hear that he's a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there with him. His brother, Chris Albert, a powerful Canton politician. He sits on the select board. The select board actually governs the police department, Canton PD. He was there. His wife, Julie Albert, was there. Their daughter, Caitlin Albert, was there. His sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, was there. Her husband, Matt McCabe, was also there. They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. You'll learn that a man by the name of Brian Higgins, also a law enforcement officer and longtime friend, longtime pal of Brian Albert, he was also there. And the two of them, the two Bryans, had been drinking most of the night together. You'll see video footage from the waterfall, which will show you that Karen and John were happy. They were affectionate. They were caring. They were loving. Just business as usual, out on a date on a Friday night. But that exact same video footage which lead investigator Michael Proctor plainly chose to ignore that video footage. It paints a very different picture of Brian Higgins. You'll learn that Higgins had romantic designs for Karen. That becomes important. Brian Higgins had engaged Karen in flirtatious texts, but days earlier she had put a stop to it. She had ghosted him, in common parlance. In other words, just ignored him. The evidence will show that the first time he saw her and was in her presence after being rejected by her was when she walked into the Waterfall Bar and Grill along with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. At 11:58 p.m., just minutes before John ultimately arrived at the Albert residence, you'll see a video at the waterfall of an unsettling interaction, troubling interaction between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. And unlike the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, in this case, you won't ignore that evidence. As the bar was closing around 12 midnight, the Alberts invited everybody back to their house for a get-together to just keep the night going. And you'll learn that Karen and John ultimately pulled up to the house. They got out of the SUV to make sure they had the right address. You see, neither John nor Karen had ever been to 34 Fairview. They weren't even sure they were at the right address. And the evidence will establish that John got out of the SUV and went into the house. Let me say that again. The facts unequivocally, the data, the science, the witnesses will all unequivocally establish that John O'Keefe went into the Albert home that night. Eyewitnesses and forensic data will establish that fact. When he didn't come back out, you'll learn that Karen grew increasingly frustrated. She got upset. She was left alone in a car in the cold, in the middle of the night, with the car idling. John had gone into the house. She expected him to come right back out. And when he didn't, seconds turned into minutes, and minutes started to clock away. She left John a voicemail, then another voicemail, voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, text messages. But he was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. The longer he didn't respond, the more upset she got. The Commonwealth will intimate, as they already have in their opening statement, that these voicemails are evidence that the two were fighting. The actual evidence in this case, however, will show the exact opposite. You'll hear that Karen was very agitated. You'll hear some voicemails where she's swearing. You'll hear voicemails where she calls him names. There's name calling. But you'll also hear the context of those voicemails. And every single one of them, every single one of those voicemails was left for John after he failed to come back out of the house, after he failed to respond to her voicemails and to her texts. Karen believed John had just left her sitting there, grabbed a beer, was partying with his friends. The evidence will actually show that John and Karen never had a crossword, not a single crossword that entire evening before he left that SUV and went inside the house. And you will learn what Karen had absolutely no way of knowing at the time. It wasn't that he wouldn't respond to her. It's that he couldn't respond to her. And the evidence will show you why. Let's talk about that. We'll introduce you to a doctor named Elizabeth Lopesada, a renowned forensic pathologist, a medical examiner, and a professor at Brown University. She will tell you that the injury to the back he couldn't walk, talk, grab his phone, cry for help, nothing. He was completely incapacitated, completely unconscious from the moment he suffered that injury. He was completely still and incapable of interacting with anyone or anything. But the doctor will tell you something more, and just as important. She'll tell you that John O'Keefe did not suffer from hypothermia, as the Commonwealth will undoubtedly allege. His body showed no signs of it. No frostbite, no cold-induced injuries to his organs, no damage based on cold or frost. Ladies and gentlemen, the scientific evidence and the medical evidence will establish that John O'Keefe had to be injured somewhere else, somewhere warmer, and his body had to have been moved out into the cold. And that's where ultimately at 6 a.m., Karen found him the next morning. You will learn that John did not have a single injury consistent with being hit by a car. Let me say that again. The evidence will establish that John did not suffer a single injury on his body consistent with having been hit by a car. Not one. You'll learn that John's torso, his ribs, his chest, his arms, his hips, his legs, his knees, his ankles, his feet, all of them, no broken bones, no fractures, no contusions, no torn ligaments, no internal injuries, not even a bruise. Nothing consistent with a car accident, despite the Commonwealth's contention that he was slammed into by a 6,000-pound SUV. Not a bruise. Dr. LaPosada will tell you with medical certainty that, in fact, John was not struck by a vehicle. Medically and scientifically, he could not have been struck by a vehicle. Therefore, as I said, there was no collision. She will tell you that the patterned abrasions on John's right arm, the patterned abrasions you see over my left shoulder, they're not the result of being struck by a car or a taillight. You'll take one look at these injuries and you'll agree with Dr. LaPosada. The evidence will show that these injuries are from an animal, like a large dog, like the large dog that was inside the Albert house that night. You'll learn that Brian Albert has actually admitted that his large dog, the family dog, is, quote, not good with strangers. And of course, John, never having been to the house before, was a stranger that night. You'll also learn that oddly, very oddly, after having their family pet for 7 years, a short time after this incident, the Alberts got rid of that dog. They called it rehoming her, but she was gone. Dr. LaPosada will also tell you that the injury to John's head was not the result of falling backward onto a flat lawn, cold or otherwise. Rather, Dr. LaPosada will tell you with medical certainty that the injury pattern to his scalp was produced by an impact from a raised or ledged surface, a surface that does not exist on Brian Albert's front lawn where John was found. The medical evidence will establish no hypothermia, no injuries from a car strike, no collision with a motor vehicle. And forensic analysis of John's cell phone, Mr. Brennan mentioned that in his opening statement. The Commonwealth's own expert will ultimately support the exact facts that I just told you, including the temperature data. John O'Keefe was injured someplace warmer, and he was moved. That alone is reasonable doubt, but there's much more. You'll also learn that there were many people at that after-hours gathering at Brian Albert's house who would have left by the front door just feet from where John O'Keefe's body would have ultimately been had he actually been there right after 12:30 a.m., which is what the Commonwealth's claim is. There were nearly a dozen people who walked out that front door directly adjacent to the precise spot where John O'Keefe would have been lying. Not a single person, not one, not a single person saw a 6'2", 216-pound man laying sprawled in the front lawn in dark clothing on a light white dusting of snow. Not one. Then the evidence will also show that every one of those same people drove by that same spot, not walked by it, drove by it to leave the house, and still not one of them saw John laying in the yard when they left between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning. But you know who else you'll find never saw a body on that lawn? The snowplow driver, a completely independent witness charged with plowing the streets in Canton that night. You'll hear that Michael Proctor, oh, he's not done yet, Mr. Proctor. You'll hear that Michael Proctor wrote a report where he claimed that Fairview had not been plowed that night. You'll learn that that was completely false. That was a lie. Michael Proctor did not want any more witnesses. He didn't want the truth. And he falsely claimed that the road was never plowed. You'll learn that he wouldn't look for the plow driver, but we did. And we found, and we'll introduce you to, Brian Loughran. He plowed Fairview that night, and what he's going to tell you is that there was no body on that lawn at 2:30 in the morning. You'll learn that Brian Loughran passed by 34 Fairview, traveling right next to Brian Albert's front yard, and at 2:30 a.m., John O'Keefe was not there. But you'll see that the plow driver also provides some other troubling information, troubling testimony for the Commonwealth. You'll learn that after making that pass at 2:30 a.m., he showed up with his plow an hour later. He stopped at the entrance of Fairview. He was looking up Fairview to decide whether or not to plow it, but he saw an obstruction. At 3:30 a.m., he looked down the street, and in the very spot precisely where Karen would later find John's body laying at 6 a.m., there was a car parked in front of it, a Ford Edge. You're going to ask yourself, who's moving a car at 3:30 in the morning into a blizzard on the side of the road? You'll learn that Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, intentionally ignored this fact as well. He did no investigation to find out who owned a Ford Edge. But again, we did. And the evidence will establish that Ford Edge happens to be a favorite model of the Albert family. More than one Albert owned a Ford Edge at the time. You'll learn that those facts will add to the mounting and the overwhelming evidence that there was no collision and John O'Keefe's body was moved onto that lawn. You'll find that this is yet additional reasonable doubt in the case. You'll be introduced to science and physics, even from the Commonwealth's own experts. That science will establish that Karen Reed's SUV was not damaged by hitting a pedestrian, and conversely, John O'Keefe's injuries did not come from being struck by a vehicle. The Commonwealth mentioned triggering events, but what you'll actually learn from the experts, some of them the Commonwealth's own experts, is that a triggering event is not evidence of an accident. It does not evidence a collision. That's why we're here, a collision. And there's no evidence of one, zero. You'll also find that those exact sort of triggering events that the Commonwealth will rely on are relatively commonplace on Karen's SUV, and none of them are associated with a claim of a collision. Folks, the science will not lie, and the physics cannot lie. And that science will tell you with certainty there was no collision with John O'Keefe. You'll add that to that rising mountain of reasonable doubt. I want to take you back to the night in question, January 29th, for just a few minutes. Remember, Karen had gone home after dropping off John and John walking to the house. While Karen was asleep at home with John's 13-year-old niece, what were the people who had been at Brian Albert's house that night? What were they doing? While she slept, what you'll find and what the evidence will show is that they were extremely busy. You'll learn that after a long night of heavy drinking, Brian Higgins left the Albert residence, but he didn't drive home. Rather, he drove over to the Canton Police Department, where he kept an office at about 1:25 a.m. Not a Canton police officer, but he kept an office there. Why go back to his office at 1:25 a.m.? Why go back to the Canton Police Department at 1:25 in the morning on the night of a blizzard? You'll learn that while there, Higgins made a call at 1:30 a.m. Higgins will later deny that he made that call. You'll find that curious. And his explanation for that late night visit to Canton PD, you'll find that it changes nearly every time he's asked about it. You'll learn that after everyone left Brian Albert's house, Brian Albert actually claimed he had no contact with anybody else except his wife. No contact. Until he woke up the next morning. So he says. Then you'll learn that that too is a complete lie. His phone records establish that he placed a call to none other than Brian Higgins at 2:22 a.m. shortly after Higgins completed that late night visit over to Canton PD. You'll wonder, what did they possibly need to talk about at 2:22 a.m. that night? The evidence will establish that Brian Albert called Brian Higgins first. Brian Albert then disconnected that call when Higgins didn't answer it. Seconds later, Brian Higgins returned the call. Brian Albert then did answer that call. They spoke for 22 full seconds, had a conversation, then they both hung up their respective phones. You'll learn that when they were asked about these calls and conversations, both Brian Albert and Brian Higgins lied about it. Both of them. They said they never had a call with each other. But then ultimately, when they were confronted with their own cell phone records and they could no longer deny the calls, they were asked independently, explain yourself. And they both came up with the exact same explanation: a butt dial. The evidence will make you question, why did Albert and Higgins speak at 2:22 a.m.? And why did they both try to cover up that phone call? You'll also learn after this incident, and within days of one another, both Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, both police officers, both trained investigators, got rid of their phones. Both of them. And what else you'll learn Brian Albert got rid of? Shortly after this incident, Brian Albert got rid of his house, the whole thing, just sold it. His childhood home, a home that had been in the Albert family for generations, he literally sold it mere months after this incident. Dog rehomed, phones destroyed, house sold. You'll learn that all these things happened shortly after the incident where John O'Keefe was found unresponsive and dying in Brian Albert's front lawn. And you'll also learn that Michael Proctor looked the other way. He did not investigate any of what I'm telling you. He pre-selected Karen Reed from the start, and he ignored everything and everyone else. Let's get back to what was happening with the others while Karen slept. What you'll learn during this trial is that Brian Albert's sister-in-law, you've heard her name before, Jennifer McCabe, she was at the waterfall that night, and she was over at the Alberts' house that evening as well. She left the after-hours gathering about 2 a.m., a little before 2 a.m., got home around 2 a.m. And you'll learn that according to the Commonwealth's own evidence from a forensic software program called Physical Analyzer made by Celebrite, it's considered the gold standard for forensic tools. You'll learn that a Google search was discovered on Jennifer McCabe's phone. A Google search that Michael Proctor and his investigators never revealed to us, but we found anyway. A Google search that was time-stamped, according to their own data, at 2:27 a.m. 5 minutes after that 2:22 a.m. call that Higgins and Albert denied having. And that Google search on Jennifer McCabe's phone read, "Hoslong to die in cold." Hoslong to die in cold. Now, she misspelled the first word. Hos is supposed to be how, but the meaning's the same. How long does it take to die in the cold? Time-stamped 2:27. And then that search was also noted by the same Celebrite program as having been deleted. The evidence will force you to ask, why is there a search on her phone? Why is it logged at 2:27 a.m.? When the Commonwealth claims that she first learned of John's death and where his body was hours later at 6 a.m. So what you'll learn is that while Karen slept, here's what was actually happening by some other very busy bees. 1:25 a.m., Brian Higgins makes an unexpected visit to Canton PD. 1:30 a.m., he makes a phone call that he later denies ever making. At 2:22 a.m., Brian Higgins and Brian Albert talk. They both deny and lie about having made that phone call. 2:27 a.m., 5 minutes later, a Google search appears on Jennifer McCabe's phone Hoslong to die in cold hours before John's body was ever discovered. A Google search she denies making, and that she later, or at least it was later logged as deleted. Meanwhile, at 2:30 a.m., the plow driver confirms that O'Keefe's body was not on the lawn of Brian Albert's house, not at 2:30 in the morning. And at 3:30 in the morning, that area was obstructed by a Ford Edge like the one the Albert family liked to own. The evidence will show in the meantime, Karen dozed in and out of a fitful sleep for the rest of the night, only to awaken just before 5 a.m. And that's when she realized in a panic, John had never come home. And you'll see, it wasn't like John to not come home. That morning, you'll see and hear evidence that Karen's emotions had morphed. It'd gone from frustration and anger, which you'll hear in the voicemails, to abject fear. Fear that something bad had happened. The evidence will establish by this time, Karen was panic-stricken. She had a feeling something was very, very wrong. She was unable to get a hold of John. Karen went to go look for him. She got in her Lexus and she backed up to leave her garage at One Meadows. You'll hear a lot about that address, One Meadows. That was John's house where Karen was staying. She backed out of the garage, and during the course of the trial, you'll hear that she actually struck another car with that right rear taillight. During the course of this trial, the Commonwealth is going to desperately claim that Karen Reed's taillight was actually damaged by hitting John O'Keefe. They'll have no evidence of it, mind you, none, but they'll make the claim. We'll show you a video of exactly how that taillight was originally damaged, or exactly what happened at 5:07 in the morning. The facts will show that it was damaged in John's own driveway at 5:07 when Karen backed up and made contact with another car in the driveway. This is 5 hours after she dropped John off and he went into the Albert residence. As a result, the taillight was minimally cracked, but it wasn't completely shattered or damaged or broken. And that's the condition of the SUV when Michael Proctor got a hold of it. That becomes important. You'll hear from an independent police officer, an eyewitness to the damage on that SUV, someone not connected to Michael Proctor or under his control. And he'll tell you that he saw the taillight damaged before it was in Michael Proctor's possession, but it was not completely shattered. And you won't have to speculate how that taillight got cracked originally. You'll see it for yourself. It's on video. You'll learn that part of the reason that Karen's Lexus hit that car at One Meadows is because she backed out looking for him at a time when she was absolutely panic-stricken and grief-stricken. Where was John? Why hadn't he come home? What had happened to him? Is he hurt? Is he passed out somewhere? Her mind was reeling. The evidence will establish she wasn't giving anything away. Everything was on the table. What could have happened to John? You'll learn that when she woke up and he still wasn't home, she was just racking her brain for what could have happened to him. And she was worried about possibly the worst. He'd gotten out of the car. He'd walked to the house. She was confused. And later, when she found him at 6 a.m. on the lawn, where she last saw him going toward the house, her mind started reeling. Oh my God, did a plow hit him? Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? What could have happened to him? And that video clip that you saw, out of context, when she said the words, he did not look like he was mortally wounded, she's not talking about at midnight. She's talking about at 6 a.m. when she found him. That's what she was talking about. Your job will be to make sure that the evidence isn't presented to you too cute by half. She was saying all those things. Did a plow hit him? Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? She was saying that to herself and to other people. And the Commonwealth, very obviously, will try to seize on that panic and twist this into some admission. But here's the actual truth. That's not a confession. Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Could a plow have hit him? That's a person trying to make sense of an unexplainable circumstance, a natural concern of a bereaved significant other, a woman desperately trying to piece together what could have happened on this tragic night. John didn't come home. And the evidence will show that Karen Reed never said, I hit him. Never. Not in the background of the 911 recording, not on any dash cam video, not on any audio, not on any police body cam, not to a first responder. It's never mentioned in a single report. It's never reported in a single report from January 29th, not by one person, because it never happened. The evidence will show that the evidence will show that there were at least 13 members of law enforcement or first responders and 2 civilian witnesses that were intently focused on what was happening at that scene. They were all over the lawn. They were all over Karen. Officer Sarath, Mullaney, Good, Lank, EMT Nuttall, Flamati, Kelly, Walsh, Woodbury, Whitley, Becker, Robery, McLaughlin. Karen, watching and listening. On January 29th, when John O'Keefe was found, not one first responder reported having heard Karen Reed say the words, "I hit him." Not one. Not one civilian reported having heard Karen Reed say, "I hit him." The facts will show that the first time this improved statement was ever claimed to have been made was some 24 hours later by a single EMT in an interview. Now listen to this, in an interview coordinated by a Canton police detective named Kevin Albert, Brian Albert's brother. And remember, Chris Albert, the other brother, is a board selectman to whom the Canton Police Department reports. And what's more, you'll learn that Katie McLaughlin, that's the EMT, that's the single EMT, the first person to have claimed to have heard this unrecorded and unreported statement, is years long close personal friends with a young woman named Caitlin Albert. You heard that right. It's Brian Albert's daughter. During the course of this trial, you'll become familiar with and you'll realize that the Alberts are indeed a powerful and indeed an influential family, and that will mean something. You'll learn that there are other major problems with the prosecution's case. The evidence will establish that Michael Proctor himself, the lead investigator and architect of this entire case, has a long-standing and personal relationship with the Albert family. Yes, that same Albert family. His sister was close friends with Julie Albert. He personally sat at head tables at weddings, or at a head table at weddings with the Albert family. He entrusted the Alberts with babysitting his own children. You heard that correctly. And yet he was the lead detective assigned to investigate the circumstances of a Boston police officer laying dead on the Alberts' front lawn. That's not just bias, you'll learn. That's not just coincidence. That, folks, is corruption. And you'll see how far it went. Michael Proctor was alone with all the critical evidence in this case, alone with Karen Reed's phone, alone with John's phone, alone with video footage, alone with the taillight material, alone when he claimed to recover evidence from 34 Fairview. He wrote the search warrants. He transported the evidence. He secured it. He submitted it. He did it all. That's Michael Proctor. And he did it without any reasonable oversight. You'll see during the trial that he intentionally lied and fabricated evidence during the course of this investigation. He lied in reports, warrants, he lied under oath. He lied about the time that he actually secured Karen Reed's vehicle. Why? Why would he lie about that? The evidence will give you the answer. He lied because he did not want it revealed that he had access to that vehicle and he had access to that taillight before any taillight fragments were found at 34 Fairview. Appreciate that. He had access to the vehicle before a single piece of taillight material was ever found at the scene. You'll find that there were 2 searches. The first and second search found 0, nothing. Nothing around John's body, nothing in the street, not one piece of taillight fragment. But once Michael Proctor had that SUV and had the taillight in his custody and control, suddenly items started magically showing up. And not just a few items, 46 pieces of bright red taillight laying in the snow, supposedly found in the exact same spot that was searched not once, but twice by independent officers. It came up with 0. To be clear, you'll learn that before Michael Proctor had access to that taillight, not a single piece was ever recovered at 34 Fairview. That will become vitally, vitally important. And what about those shards of plastic, by the way? What about this DNA that the Commonwealth mentioned? They're going to try to dazzle you with talk of DNA because it sounds so scientific. DNA was on the taillight, but you'll learn that there was no DNA on the actual shards that they claim came in contact with John's arm. None. There was no blood, no tissue, no skin, no DNA on a single shard of plastic that they claim cut deep abrasions into John's arm, the arm that you saw overhead. The DNA that was actually found, the actual science will show, was found outside of the taillight housing where anyone with access to that vehicle would have touched. And it wasn't just one male's DNA. In that exact same sample, there were 3 men found, John and 2 unidentified males. So unless the Commonwealth is going to shift their theory that that SUV hit 3 men that night, their entire theory falls apart. And speaking of DNA, the evidence will further establish that John O'Keefe's shoe, the one that he was wearing when he was found, was sampled. And that DNA revealed 5, count them, 5 unidentified males. Recall that the evidence will establish independently that John was injured someplace warmer and had to be moved onto that lawn. 5 unidentified males touching that shoe. You'll also learn that you are not the first person, not the first to hear about the Commonwealth's theory of this case, that John was hit by an SUV. That's their theory. The Commonwealth presented this exact same claim to their own medical examiner, a woman by the name of Dr. Irini Scorti-Bello. And you'll learn that after reviewing what's called a law enforcement accident notifier, with law enforcement's theory of the collision written in it, defined in it, after conducting the autopsy herself, after examining John's injuries in detail, she refused to conclude that John's death was a homicide based on the Commonwealth's presentation and their theory. That's right. The Commonwealth's own medical examiner will not deem the manner of death in this case, a homicide. She won't do it. But they're nonetheless back again trying to present the exact same theory to you in this trial. Again, the evidence will show that that is reasonable doubt. Throughout this trial, the Commonwealth will try to convince you of paranormal events, phones calling themselves, messages deleting themselves, Google searches made and then unmade, evidence magically appearing and evidence magically disappearing. But all that smoke and all those mirrors will not ever reach their burden, because that's what this case is ultimately about. It's about the Commonwealth's burden proof. You'll learn that during the trial, the Commonwealth bears the highest burden known to our justice system. They must prove every element of every charge beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And you'll learn that moral certainty means the highest level of certainty known in human affairs. It's not a small thing. They're not going to be able to do that. Not when every piece of this case was handled by a disgraced investigator with a motive to protect his friends, not when the physical evidence contradicts their very theory, not when their own medical examiner won't call this case a homicide based on the exact theory that they're presenting to you, not when the conduct of those in the house and the utter lack of investigation speaks volumes about those who actually have something to hide. By the end of this trial, you'll conclude that Karen Reed is not guilty of hitting John O'Keefe with her SUV. There was no collision. She's the victim of a botched and biased and corrupted investigation that was never about the truth, folks. It was about preserving loyalty. You'll find that this case is the very definition of reasonable doubt. And at the end of this trial, we'll ask you to return the only verdicts, all 3 of them, that are consistent with the evidence, the science, the truth, and justice. Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Folks, why don't we take our morning recess?
All right. I turned my camera off. That way it didn't lag. It didn't take too much power. Well, so I like this Mr. Jackson. He is one fine attorney. And I think she's in really, really good hands. I think that I hope that this trial ends in a not guilty. I feel like that's really the only way that we win is when we take these cases that should have never been brought and we take them to trial. But you have to have a good enough attorney that will actually do the work and not be intimidated by the other side or even the judge, or be worried that if they actually do their job, they're not going to get on the bad side of their friend, who they usually argue against on hundreds and thousands of cases. So you got to remember, like, even after this case is over, they still have to practice law. And I'm really thinking more of around here, you know, locally, lawyers in a small area. I don't think Jackson's even from that area. So whenever this case, the Karen Reed's case is over, he'll probably go back home. But those are the lawyers that cost a lot of money that will travel in for cases. And so many of you have mentioned it tonight that they agreed to take this case for free, this second trial. Now, I know that they said her family had some money, and so I'm sure they were paid a pretty penny in the first trial. But, you know, criminal cases, lawyers' fees will drain you. They'll take your life savings. Depends on what you're facing. But it'll take your life savings. It'll take your home. It'll take, you know, they just keep wanting more money and more money and more money and more money. That's one of the things that we see a lot around here. Cases are delayed and delayed and delayed. And every time they delay it, the lawyer shows up saying, I need more money. I need $2,000 more. I need $5,000 more. If it's a big enough case, I need $20,000 more. And they don't bat an eyelash. You want me to withdraw from the case? I need some money. You know. And a lot of times, do you know how many people have reached out to me and said, well, this lawyer took my money and then gave my case to somebody else? Well, they don't have no choice. So then whenever they go to somebody else, they're saying, well, now you got to pay me. So you already paid $8,000 to this lawyer. Now you got to turn around and pay this one $5,000. You ain't got no more money by the time you actually do go to court. They've done drained you dry. And now it's time for them to actually show up in the courtroom and do the work. And if you ain't got no more money, what do? You think somebody's going to show up? Or are you going to, what are you going to do? Then you just left with a public defender. It just blows me away how dirty they abuse, the way that the system is set up. And I realize that it's set up in a way that allows this to happen. But what about when it becomes a practice of abusing it? I don't see how, when you talking about all this stuff around here, when you talk about millions and millions of dollars unaccounted for that has absolutely no receipts, no documentation, no nothing. And they're just like, oh, well, don't think about that. I'm sorry, we screwed that up. But now we're gonna do this money that comes in right. Trust us. How are we supposed to trust you? It's like the magician, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Or they're over here doing this, but they're like, look over here, look over here. Don't pay no attention to my hand over there. Just look right here, look right here. Don't ask us no questions because we don't have no answers. But who's held accountable for those millions of dollars, like the flood money, the money that was donated to this area? Where's all that documentation at? Well, what I heard them say, unless I heard it wrong, which I could, I ain't above getting stuff wrong. I get stuff wrong all the time. But when we find out that we're wrong, we should admit it. Like I was wrong the other day. And this is a perfect example of how we can be wrong for a very, very, very long time. Okay, so I grew up in Cumberland. I lived on Stacy Hill, which was just, who else lived on Stacy Hill? Judge Ron Johnson from Harlan County. He also lived up there. Well, there was a prosecutor that Harlan had forever. He was also named Johnson. I forget his first name. Well, I always thought that they were either father and brothers, like older brother, younger brother. I always thought that. Like my whole life, I thought that they were brothers or father and son. And I said it the other night, and somebody said that they were not related. Because Russell Allred took over the judge seat after Ron Johnson. And I'd forgotten about Russell Allred. He popped up on the scene about the time that Otis Dawn was fading away. He had gotten sick and stuff. But see, the game is always the same. The game's always the same. The only thing that changes are the players. It's the only thing that changes. And they don't never change at the same time. So this one will go out of office and somebody else will come in. And then a couple years will go by. This other one will go out of office and this one will come in. And then some years will go by, and then years will go by, and then this one over here will go out of office. But usually, once they're in there, they don't leave till they die. I mean, talk about, I don't even know what to call it. What do you call it? I don't think that it's good for one person to spend 60 years as the mayor or the judge or whatever. I just don't think that it's good that way. Prosecutor or state representative, magistrate. I think we should be able to give other people a chance, to bring their own expertise and stuff to it. I mean, and if somebody's does bad, then you vote them out and you put somebody else in. I just think that it creates too much loyalty, like it creates too many ways for people to be political. Well, I can get more over on him, or this one here will help me more. He'll give, or this one here has a crush on me, so I can use that to my advantage and get more money. I don't know. It just, ethics, man. It's called having morals, values, ethical standards. Goes back to what I was saying before. If somebody doesn't show very good morals and values in their personal life, how do you think they're going to care about taking an oath? They're not going to care about that. We have another article that we're going to talk about tomorrow. This little girl over here in Virginia started working at the jail, been there 4 months. And she got caught this morning, I think it was this morning, bringing in contraband to the inmates. Now, you know who the real hero of that is, of that whole situation, is the staff member who brought it to their attention and brought awareness to it. And whoever listened to her, whoever that leader was, or not her, but whoever it was, whoever brought it to the leader's attention, maybe the jailer, I don't know, sheriff, but they actually did the right thing. They didn't cover it up. They arrested her, honey, and put her in the same jail that she was working at. And I don't think she had a bond. I don't think they gave her a bond. She's charged with 2 felonies now. And, they're loving it. Her employers, they're loving it. Oh, I mean, they're embarrassed. They're not loving that she did it. But they're loving being able to put her, make an example out of her. Because they're the ones who put out a big old statement about it. We're going to read it tomorrow. But look at the contrast of how they handled this situation with this girl working at the jail versus how they deal with it here. Everything that we've seen in the Ben Fields investigation, drinking on the job, turning the courthouse into an absolute brothel. But it's not even a brothel. Means that the women are usually, voluntarily giving their services. These women were not voluntarily giving their services, even though they weren't physically forced. As old Matt Easter likes to say. That's not even a brothel. You know what that is? That's a dungeon. And they're going to trade favors for freedom. And if you don't agree to the favors, we're going to put handcuffs on you and we're going to take you down in the basement, where you're liable to get whooped by old dude's wife. There have been accusations. It's been alleged. Been admitted in his polygraph. Where is any of the accountability for the jail? For the goings on at the courthouse? I still don't think that that has been addressed at all. At all. So we're going to be talking. We got some good shows coming up. So we will see you guys tomorrow morning. Miss Marnie says ethics and morals are needed and sorely lacking these days. Well, the Bible tells us. The Bible tells us exactly what's going to happen. And we're seeing it right before our eyes. Backwoods, Georgia girl. Vultures, they swarm after people die. Miss Connie, ethics, yes. Marnie says, yes, all elected positions should have term limits, in my opinion. Mine too. Mine too. Connie, wonder if public officials have to take ethics classes. As a CPA, I have to take 2 hours of ethics class every year to keep it. Absolutely. You know they do. And if they don't, they have to. They have to. Marnie says, even if they take it, doesn't mean they will be ethical, unfortunately. Oh, yeah. When I was in school, the ones that were already working in law enforcement, who were there just getting their classes, most of that, and there was just a couple here, it's peppered through my classes. But each one of them, except for one. Now, let me take that back. One who went on to be a Kentucky State police officer, and I told him before he ever started that he was probably the only one that I thought had the morals and values of Peter. That boy was such a good kid. Great student. Great person. Don't make them better than him. I mean, he was really, really a good dude. And as far as I know, he's still a KSP. I'm not sure exactly where he's at because I don't see him much in his police car. But he lives in Letcher County. Always has. And I think the world of him. But now the rest of them, I haven't seen him in a long time. But the rest of them, their girlfriends did their work for them. They didn't. They sat back in the class and would watch movies on their phone the whole time we were in class. Like, they didn't take it seriously at all. But I don't think it's necessarily their fault. I was very shocked at most of my professors. Something that they all said at some point or another. It doesn't matter, you don't have to unalive yourself to get an A. As long as you pass, that's all that really matters. And here I was busting my butt to get A's and keep my GPA and all that stuff. Like, that meant a whole lot to me to do so well on all that stuff and to obtain as much knowledge and stuff as I could. And every one of them was just like, it's not going to make no difference. A C is going to graduate just as much as an A is. Your GPA isn't going to be on your diploma. No job is going to care that you were a 4.0 student. And they were right. They were right. Every bit of it, they were right. But at the time, it really just knocked the wind out of me that my professors would say that to me, And it wasn't so much that I was doing it for anybody else as I was doing it for myself. I wanted to get that education. I wanted that 4.0 through school. So anyway, all right, guys, we'll see y'all tomorrow. I'll quit yapping. Have a good night. Love you all. Bless you. Stay blessed. Lord Jesus, we'll come to you tonight. Just thankful for another day. Thankful to be together. We pray that you'll be with each of us tomorrow, Lord, as we go through our journeys. We pray that you will touch us physically, mentally, spiritually. Give us the strength that we need to get through tomorrow. I pray that you will heal each of everybody that's under the sound of my voice, that you will heal any medical problems that they're going through right now, Lord. We just love you, Lord, and we thank you for saving my soul. I thank you for saving my soul, Lord. I ask that you forgive me for my sins and just help me to be a better person each and every day, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Can't hide from hillbilly crime.
You can't hide from hillbilly crime.
You can't hide from hillbilly crime.
You may not know that there's a crew in town. The head hillbillies are making their rounds. Small town whispers loud and clear. The sheriff shot the judge in his chambers chair.
Sheriff got a secret he won't keep. Judge shot dead in his disbelief. A lot of people have some stories to tell. Dark pass away, get the sound of a shotgun shell.
All the secrets spill on down. Voices loud in this old town. From the courthouse to the ground. Rumors fly and they can't be bound.
Neighbors hide behind their blinds. Whisper tales of troubled minds. Skeletons covering the mountainside. A treacherous reality in the pines.
Winter reveals the hidden lies. Moonlight couldn't mask the cries. Shadows caught in sunlit skies. There's no cover, no disguise. All the